All right, so here we are. We're back this week. We had a few technical difficulties, so anyways, we're going to see how this is all going to shape up and shape out. But what I'm really going to be doing is just concentrating on one point here. This one point is basically you're just going to be dealing with attitude. Okay, so many times we hear attitude has many different types of effects on organizations and corporations and things of that nature. So here we are with Joseph Gantar, founder of Gantar Enterprise. We're just going to continue on moving through this. So the impacts of attitudes, believe it or not, are more important than the facts, more important than the past, more important than the education, more important than the failures, and more important than the successes. So what does this all mean? So your attitude, regardless of what the facts are. So if you have your back against the wall and you have nothing to go by as far as concrete or actual substance of tangible evidence in saying we can actually do this because here's the spreadsheet, the numbers compute, everything is in, and here we go. The facts don't count. When your attitude is in the right place, they don't count. In fact, if your attitude and your mental state of mind is actually in a place where you're actually thinking, okay, I know I messed up in the past. I know I have something that's going on. And I'm like, what is going on? The battle within. That's what's going on. But if you're in the right place mentally and you're physically in the situation and living it, the past doesn't count because your mental state will determine the outcome of whatever you're in. So your attitude mentally will overcome your past. So more important than the education, how many times have you ever heard of someone saying, I figured this out, I figured that out, and then like, okay, so what did you? The reality is that if you really want to try and dial it all and figure it all out, those that actually didn't finish post-secondary were more likely to have the drive, the stamina, the endurance, the know-how. They just figured it out to become 7, 8, 9, 10, even 11 figure earners because the education didn't matter. They just kept on moving and pushing on forward, right? So your attitude is also more important than your failures. How many times does it take for a champion to win? He just has to get up one more time than when he's knocked down. And that's pretty much a very common theme with what is ever happening in these times these days. We see a lot of people that are just kind of going. So this picture illustrates someone who's actually just seen a lot, done a lot at a bit of a crossroads, and they're in the dilemma of like, hey man, like what is going on? So this is why this picture's here. He's just trying to show like the journey is real and it's long and it's great. You want to know why? Because if it was short and if it was sweet, then everybody would be where they think they ought to be, but it's not the case anymore. And obviously, your attitude is more important than your success. You don't need to do 10 victory laps because you won the 200-meter race. Who cares? The reality is that there's going to be another race shortly after. So, and the championships and all of that great stuff all lasts of less than only a few minutes. By the time you hear the gun go off and the medal around your neck, great. And that's just the way how this kind of unfortunately unfolds. So you have to make sure that you're in the right place at the right time mentally and you're able to actually understand what is actually going on. It's all about your attitude. Okay, so when we're talking about, well, how else would they actually affect us? Well, who cares what other people think? Okay? Who cares about the facts? Who cares about the appearance? The reality is that it will make or break a company, a church, an organization, whatever that may be. And we also cannot change the inevitable. So what does this all mean? It all comes down to what you're actually being able to process. And when you're processing things and you're trying to assess things and you're trying to figure out, okay, I know I'm going to look like whatever, but I got to just do it. So you see like the individuals that come out and they're all of a sudden, okay, we're going to do this, something goes wrong. And then you're like, well, what do we do? And then all of a sudden there's someone that takes the shirt off their back or their coat off their back, covers up another individual, or all of a sudden you see someone say, hey, you want to sit where I'm sitting because I don't really need it as bad as where I need to sit, because obviously you would need the, you know, opportunity to sit down in this situation because of your current life circumstances. And we just want to try and make sure that everyone actually tries to get to their destination comfortably, right? So that's what happens when you don't even worry about what other people think. Who cares if you think, if you might think like you look like an idiot in the moment, but you know what? The reality is maybe you do. But at the same time, you probably just established a lifelong friend that could help you out over and over and over again. 6 months, 20 years, 16 years down the road, it doesn't matter the time frame is what I'm getting at, okay? Your attitude is more important than the facts. We just went through that one. I apologize. That's a repeat. Yeah, I'm human. I sometimes actually do these things just because, heck, why not? More important than the appearance. So don't ever underestimate the power of appearance. I mean, for kicks and giggles, I mean, Mr. T wore really bad looking shoes. And there was an interview where he was actually asked, why do you wear such raggedy shoes? And he's like, you know what? It's because I don't want to forget where I came from. So just because you see somebody, they may look a certain way, that doesn't mean that they're actually in that predicament or in that compromised position or whatever that might look like. What we're actually dealing with is someone dealing with whatever life circumstances that's given them. But the reality is that you don't have to look a certain way or do a certain thing in order to portray a certain type of, you know, season in life that you're kind of going through. All right. That's basically what that comes down to, is you don't have to look a certain way and be a certain way in order to actually, oh, look, great on them, great on, no, just because the guy's got so much, necklaces and watches and rings and all this fancy stuff, he's probably broke. But here's the other thing. The reality is that it'll actually make or break a company, a church, an organization, a team. I've seen this time and time again. Attitudes. I've played on great teams. The attitudes sucked, and so was the end result at the end of the year. I worked, played on. I always say worked because I always worked whenever I played sports. It was just something that I really enjoyed. But attitudes were great. The talent wasn't there, but we out hustled. We had the biggest heart, and we end up winning championship after championship after championship. And last but not least, we cannot change the inevitable. There are some things that we just cannot change, and we won't be able to change, but we can only control our attitude in those situations or circumstances and situations. Why? Because we are only in control of what we do. So, regardless of the outcome, your state of mind will determine your experience. So, here on the last little bit here, how it is attitudes actually impact it's the only variable that we can control, nothing else. And the reason why I have this here picture is because, you know what? Just because it might look like you're completely against the wall, don't ever lose hope, because there's always that light at the end of the tunnel. Who knows what that light looks like? Who knows what that light actually is? Who knows where that light is coming from? And who knows how far it actually is? But I'm telling you, at the end of every storm, there's always a bright, sunny day out there, all right? So the reality is that 10% is life and 90% is how we react to it. And you're thinking, what are you talking about? I'm telling you, 90% of what you actually are experiencing is your attitude. 10% of it is just the situation. I mean, come on, let's be real here. Many times when you could be in a very compromised position, but if you have the right attitude and if you know how to say the things in the right tone and you're tactful about it, you could probably get out of it. And that's probably going to be key. And I have no idea why, but I'm extremely thirsty this evening, so bear with me. But The attitudes is also the extra pulse in life, and it's the difference of leading others. I don't know how many times have you ever heard of people saying or wanting to do things in such a way where they're like, you know what, we're just going to do this, and this has to be this way, and it has to be that way. Well, that's bad attitude. They might think that they're charismatic and leading in charge, and the reality is it's probably just turning everybody off, and they're just like, you know what, we're all done. Like we're done with this fake facade show attitudes, everything, and he's just black and white. Forget that. That's just the biggest isolating leadership maneuver out there. Because here's the thing, great leaders, they understand that attitudes create the atmosphere. See, great leaders also, when I say they actually understand the attitudes that create the atmosphere, the positive attitude, positive atmosphere, negative attitude, negative atmosphere. And that's how that's going to be. There's nothing you can really do about it except for changing your attitude, regardless of the situations or circumstances that you're going through. And I guarantee you that it's all about your mindset. With that mindset is your attitude. And I'm just going to leave it at that. You want to know why? Because next week we're going to be back here 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern. So until next time, work hard and stay humble.